Greetings. My name is Eduardo Varela, and welcome to another lecture from the 2020 Honors Chemistry Short Lecture Series. Now I have a hypothetical situation for you. What would you do if chemicals were being dropped on us humans right now and we were all dying and there was nothing we could do about it? It's crazy, right? But I have something to tell you. That's exactly what we're doing to our coral reefs. Today I'm here to talk to you about harmful chemicals that are damaging our coral reefs. As I stated before, my topic is main chemicals which are damaging coral reefs. A quick little summary of what I will talk about is written here. I will start off with the benefits of coral reefs and then move on to my CNN article, Sunscreen Chemicals / UV Filters, Ocean Acidification, Coral Bleaching Ossification, Result, and lastly, my conclusion. Many people don't realize the importance of coral reefs. In order for me to explain the chemical part behind all this, we have to understand why it is such a big deal that these chemicals are harming coral reefs. So what really are they? In order not to get into too much detail, simply put, it is a structure underwater that is made up of corals. The most popular among these corals are the stony corals, which are an exoskeleton made up of calcium carbonate. Coral reefs are a form of protection. They make sure the island or coastline it is surrounding does not get damaged by waves or tropical storms. It is also a habitat to many of the fish that people nearby live off of. Although many people don't take this into account when thinking about what will happen if coral reefs die, it is very important for the economy. Coral reefs create a huge influx of money because they turn the islands in which they live near into tourist spots. Coral reefs are sometimes referred to as nature's medicine cabinet. Well, maybe not by high school students like us, but you get the point. They have been known to produce new drugs that could actually be used to treat cancer. Now that we all know how important they are, why don't we get into the CNN article? My CNN article was titled Common Sunscreen Ingredient Octocrylene Might Be Harmful to Coral by Melissa Pandica. Many countries are seeing the problems with the toxic chemicals in sunscreen. In fact, Hawaii became the first state to ban sunscreen with oxybenzone and octinoxate. Apart from these two chemicals, there is another one being studied. This new chemical is octocrylene. Dieter Stein, along with some colleagues in the French National Center for Scientific Research, studied octocrylene. The problem with it was that it was able to couple to fatty acids. This made it lipid soluble, which means that it was easier for it to dissolve in fat or oils. Since it was more lipid soluble, it accumulated in corals. No toxic effects were found when studying this at levels of 5 micrograms per liter of octocrylene. But when they moved it up to 50 micrograms per liter, they started to see malfunctions in the mitochondria. They concluded that octocrylene is toxic at these levels. Now let's talk about sunscreen chemicals, which are ultraviolet filters. Oxybenzone is a common chemical found in sunscreen. It changes the DNA of coral cells so that mature corals become sterile and are unable to reproduce. It also causes younger coral to encase themselves in their own skeleton where they starve and die. The chemical formula for oxybenzone is C14H12O3. Octinoxate causes coral bleaching to occur. The chemical formula for octinoxate is C18H26O3. I will explain how exactly coral bleaching happens later on in my presentation. There is a reason why these chemicals are found in sunscreen. Simply put, octinoxate and oxybenzone act as a sponge and absorb all the UV rays from the sun, but they also have a lot of negative effects. Another factor that plays into coral bleaching is ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is when the pH levels in the ocean drop. It is caused by rising levels of CO2 in the atmosphere, mostly from burning fossil fuels. You may get a little lost in this next part, so it is important to listen closely. The CO2 is absorbed by seawater, setting in motion chemical reactions that produce bicarbonate and carbonate ions. Coral polyps, the tiny living soft-bodied coral animals, bring in seawater containing bicarbonate, carbonate, and calcium ions into a calcifying space between its cells and the surface of the existing skeleton. They pump hydrogen ions out of the space to produce more carbonate ions, making it easier to make calcium carbonate for their skeletons. But when the ocean absorbs excess CO2, as is happening now, there are more bicarbonate ions but fewer carbonate ions in seawater, making it harder for corals to accrete skeletons. If you still don't understand, I will repeat it in basic terms. The excess CO2 makes it harder for the corals to thicken their skeletons and they get weak. I have also included a graph that explains this process. Coral bleaching happens when water temperature rises to about 87 or 88 degrees Fahrenheit, causing corals to expel the algae called zooxanthellae that live in their tissue. Zooxanthellae are able to capture light and then turn that into energy. This is a lot like what plants do. This provides corals with essential nutrients, and when zooxanthellae algae leaves the corals, then the coral stars. They also give them their beautiful colors, but when they disappear, corals turn into a ghastly white color, hence the name coral bleaching. Octanoxate causes coral to absorb more heat, so the temperature threshold for bleaching gets lower. Over the past 40 years, big coral reef bleaching events has increased fivefold, new research finds. In fact, these findings are starting to point to the thought that coral reefs might vanish in the span of our lifetime. The average reef was affected every 25 to 30 years in the 1980s, but in 2016, the average coral is affected every 6 years. Oxybenzone is a skeletal endocrine disruptor, inducing ossification of the planula and encasing the entire planula in its own skeleton. Ossification is a formation of bones, and oxybenzone causes the corals to have an abnormal bone formation. Planulae form when coral egg and sperm join to create an embryo. There would be many problems if all coral reefs were to die. Animals that rely on coral as a place to live and protection would also be negatively impacted. And because this marine life is a vital part in what some people eat, the death of the coral reefs would make it almost impossible for these people to eat and get their hands on food. The ocean fishing industry, which employs 38 million people worldwide, would completely fall. Caribbean island nations that depend on tourism dollars would not get any money anymore. And finally, many people's health would suffer, even those who do not live close to coral reefs because of the medicine coral reefs provide. In conclusion, harmful chemicals are causing coral reefs to be damaged. This can have negative effects on humans. Most of these damages come from chemicals in sunscreen and ocean acidification.